Kadosh Boker or Bekiim Bahalacha 6, day 40, page 103. 103. This is Siman Kufnun Chet, which is 159, Halacha Dalit. If you remember, we were talking about the utensil which was used for Netilat Yadayim, and now we're going to speak about a Kli Shenikev. Kli Shenikev means that you have a utensil which is leaking. So he says over here like this: whenever we're talking about a utensil and it's got a hole, there's two different measurements. There's a measurement which is enough in order to release liquids, and then there's a utensil which has a hole which is enough to enter liquids. Meaning, you could have a small little tiny hole, liquid might come out, but for it to go in, it's much more difficult. So he says over here like this. Right? He says, כונס משקה, הוא שיש בכלי נקב גדול בשיעור כזה שניתנו ישימו אותו על משקים, ייכנסו בתוכו דרך הנקב, והוא גדול מנקב שיעור מוצא משקה, שהמשקים שבתוך הכלי יוצאים בו. So basically, when it's to exiting the utensil, it's required a smaller hole than when it's entering the utensil. Meaning, if I've got a utensil and I make a little tiny pinhole, right? All of a sudden, the liquids will come out. But if I have liquids there, and it's inside the same pinhole sometimes, and I put it on top of liquids, liquids will not always come in. It has to be a bigger hole in order to have it, the liquids are going to come in. Okay? So he says over here like this. He says, if right now there's a hole in the utensil, which is going to be kones mashke, אז בטל מתור הכלי, so then it's not a kli, and you can't do netilat yadayim from it. Now, even if you're going to tell me that there's a hole, and from the hole downwards, there is a revi'it, it still is pasul from being a keli. ודווקא שנוטל דרך פיו למעלה, שמה שממנו מן הנקב למעלה, אינו חשוב ככלי. But then it's not considered a keli, ונמצא שאין המים באים על ידו מהכלי, so therefore it comes out that it's not going to come from the keli. אבל אם נוטל דרך הנקב שרי, but if you're doing it through the hole, it's going to be permitted, כיוון שמחזיק רביעית ממנו ולמטה, because from the hole downwards, it's already got a revi'it. Okay? Look one more time, just see look and pay attention to the English. You see there in the English on page 103 in the bottom, it says the Talmud describes two levels of leaks in the container, motzi and kones. So the motzi, it just means simply the container leaks. So if one fills up the liquid, so it slowly seeps through the tiny puncture. But kones means that if you push it down into water, the water will begin to seep into it, into the puncture. So technically, it is possible for a container to have a leak that it's a motzi, but not kones. Okay, so he says halacha is that a container that made to hold liquids, but has a leak, and it's already going to have the leak of kones, it's not considered a keli anymore. So you can't use it. Now he says even if the hole is above the point where the container holds a revit, it's still going to be a problem, right? It's still possible to put a revit. It's still going to be disqualified. But he says why? Because the portion of the container above the hole is not a keli anymore. Okay, even though the bottom one does. But if you're using the hole, right, and therefore, so now it's going to be kosher. Because you're using the hole and the bottom part has a revit. Okay? Meaning that the hole became the spout. Yeah, the hole became the spout. Okay? Fine. Let's see 49. Right? He says over here like this. This is a ruling of Maran and Shulchan Aruch. Mishnah Berurah cited a number of poskim, right? That he comes and he says, right, that who disagreed with this ruling. They ruled that since this container was meant to hold liquids, once it has a leak and it loses its status as a kli entirely, he says, even though it can still hold, right? That's what he's trying to say over here, even though it's still going to come and it's still going to hold, right, from it. So now he comes and he says like this. He says, how do you pour from it? So he says like this. The Ben Ish Chai comes and he wrote that according to Maran, it's permissible to perform Netilat Yadayim by pouring into water into hands directly through the hole in the container. In practice, however, he ruled that one should not say the bracha when doing it in such fashion. He should say the bracha while thinking the name of Hashem. But the Rishon LeZion disagree with this in principle, and he says no, that once we've established it's permissible to do Netilat Yadayim, so then you're allowed to say the Hashem Memachut. Meaning, if you're allowed to do Netilat Yadayim, you could use the bracha of Al Netilat Yadayim as well. Okay? Fine. The last little halacha, it's the last footnote on 104 on the bottom. It says how to pour through a crack. So he says if someone needs to use a crack container for netilat yadayim, pouring the water through the crack, the water might leak through the crack and only dribble onto his hands. The Mishnah Berurah pointed out that the poskim debated whether you could fill the mitzvah in such a manner. According to Shulchan Aruch, it's possible to pour the water in one's hands drop by drop, as long as each drop is large enough to wet the skin where it lands. It is necessary for the following drop to land adjacent to a spot that is already wet from the previous drops, and continue this process until the water has been poured on the entire hands. According to other poskim, however, one must pour the water in the entire hand continuously. So according to those poskim, obviously, it's possible to use a crack only if it's wide enough that you could actually use the crack properly. The Ben Ish Chai and the Rishon LeZion also concur with Manan's opinion. Therefore, it's possible to use a crack container, even if it's going to be drop by drop. The Mamar Mordechai expresses wonder how anyone could possibly succeed in doing Netilat Yadayim in such a fashion when the water leaks out one drop at a time. He concluded, as sages said, just think about it. What savlanut you need in order to, you need such a patience in order to do, drop by drop. Right? It's almost like the patience of, dealing with people that are on their phones, right? Instead of paying attention to the shiur. The Kaf HaChaim Sofer explained it more simply, saying that we are speaking about a case where a crack is widened until it is practical to pour the water through it. Right? He says the Kochvad, the Shvat, he says, right, that the case is speaking where there are several cracks parallel to one another, and therefore became a kodnos mashke, and therefore obviously it's like you could use it as netilat yadayim.